Sweden, the city of Gävle, yes, Gävle, erects a giant goat statue out of wood and straw for Christmas time, and every year the townspeople do everything in their power to burn it down. No, it's not legal. The city tries really hard to keep this from happening, and has turned every Christmas season into a month-long game of attack and defend for nearly 60 years. And oh boy do they attack! So far, out of the 59 goats ever built, only 18 have managed to survive the whole month. One had a car driven into it, one was burnt down 6 hours after it was built, one year they doused it in fireproof material and it got burned down, one had a bunch of seeds trapped in the straw so it was literally eaten by birds, one was stolen by a random guy and put in his backyard, and there was another attempt to illegally carry it to Stockholm via helicopter that failed because life was becoming too fun. In spite of fences and security cameras and fireproofing and apparently the military, the city has failed to suppress the indomitable human spirit that just so happens to be unfortunately weaponized into committing arson. As of right now, the GOAT for 2024 is up, with a 24-hour live stream on the Gävle tourism site, of course to deter arsonism, slowly waiting for its fate.
Hello everyone, welcome to In Time, the second show of the day, and it's a holiday too in the US. Only America could turn capitalism into a holiday. It's Black Friday. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's also the first day, sort of the second because we did have the breaking, but of the 𝐒𝐸𝐴 goat is now up. If you take a look at our sidebar, you will see the goat there, and we will be keeping the goat in our hearts, and we'll be praying for the goat. It's anyone's guess as to whether or not the goat is going to make it. I will say I wanted to give a quick shout out here. Now, those of you who've been watching for a while know that basically everything in the back, believe it or not, A, is real, and B, has some ties to the show in one way or another. Make Donald Trump again. The has some kind of, and we've got this. This is our recent addition here. This comes to us from 𝐒𝐨𝐿, so we wanted to say thank you very much for this. Now, what you can see she's done here is she's got the goat in a protective shield of red, orange, and yellow. So you can tell she is Team Pro Goat, and she's got this protective shield. It's very nicely done, and so we're going to keep this right in the back here, along with all of our other trinkets that we reference from time to time. I would also like to thank Blonde Bombsheller for infiltrating Team Burn the Goat. She really wants to keep that goat alive. She tells me that all the time. Was very concerned for the goat's welfare, and but pretends to be Team Burn the Goat so that she can get in and figure out what they're doing. We're concerned about drones this year, quite frankly, but that's fortunate. The goat made it last year. That was my bet, and I'm betting it's going to make it this year. My worst case scenario is that we're doing breaking live, and huge tragedy in the U.S. and hundreds of people are dead, and all of a sudden the goat goes up. So I have to admit I'm a little concerned keeping it in the sidebar, but we are going to keep it in the sidebar. That's a live stream of the goat as it is right now. And as is our tradition on In Time, we're going to be keeping doing that. Now, as for today and today's topic, so I'd like to apologize those of you who were observant, and one of you pointed this out, that the show was scheduled several days ago, and 3 p.m. we had to preempt it. We moved it. We had Greg on later that day, and Greg was helpful as always. It's always a delight having Greg on, but we still wanted to do the show, so we're doing it now, and we are having on someone who is, quite frankly, I have not seen a better a better historian of um, European history. I'm still a little under the root canal, still a little sedated. Haven't seen a better European historian and or of Poland. She also spends a good deal of time in Ukraine working to try to reunite families and to spread the word. We're going to talk about that, about what Russia is doing in Ukraine about the genocide, and we are going to talk about the peace deal. The official deadline has already expired, and yet, as predicted, they are still sort of working on it. Where do we see this going, and what can we expect? So, without further ado, let's bring out Lucy Hayes. Lucy, how are you?
I'm okay. I was supposed to be in Ukraine at this point. I'm at my mother's place.
I know I was a
But
little surprised when you said that you were going to be home and not in Ukraine. So
yeah, because my dog ate my passport on the day of
wait,
my
excuse, no, go back a step. Your
yeah,
dog ate your passport.
yeah.
You're literally
Hold
going with
on.
that. Okay,
Yeah,
okay,
hold on.
fine.
I think I have to change my. There you go. Okay.
Okay.
Do it sound any better now?
It sounds a little better, yes.
Yes, okay. That's because I've been using my inbuilt laptop microphone and now I'm using my Wave
Uh,
1.
oh, that would certainly improve it. All right. Although I still heard. Let me so your other microphone said my dog ate my passport. That's what I heard on the other
Yeah, on the
microphone, and
day
I
of my
honestly.
on the day, yeah. I can show it. I have
Oh
it
yeah,
with me.
I just can't imagine trying to tell customs. Yes, my dog ate my passport. Just.
Oh, it's just very heavily damaged by
Oh God.
yeah, he just because he is pretty, how should I say, imprinted onto me. He likes me the
Mhm.
most. I was the one that took him in, and he usually is pretty sad when I leave. So I guess that was a subtle way of saying you should not
Oh,
leave just yet.
she figured out that. Yeah. Oh, nice, nice. Okay. All right. So
Yeah.
we have a couple of things I think we need to talk about. The resignation of basically Zelensky's chief of staff, the number two guy,
Yeah.
essentially. We need to talk about the quote peace plan, and also I'd like to talk a bit about Witkoff and that release. We have all of and it's Haze's. I had said Hayes earlier. It's Haze's uh,
Let's dealer's
link.
choice.
Yeah, which is awfully considerate of you. We have all of Haze's links and the links of some people we're going to be talking about in the description already. So,
Yeah.
where do you want to start of the three major things that I just brought up? Where did you want to start?
Maybe the newest thing, the 𝐒𝐸𝐬 thing, the thing that many people wanted to happen for a long time, because there are those 5 people that are the closest people to Zelensky that run things. 𝐒𝐸𝐬 was on top of them, and basically was Zelensky's right-hand man. He was in a very peculiar position because I don't think there's anything in the Constitution or anywhere really that specifies his position. I mean, he's not in the government anymore, but there was nothing that specified his position in the government, and yet he had a pretty disproportional amount of power. He was able to do a lot when it come to the war decisions, to come to internal policy, when it came to international relations, when it comes to diplomacy. He apparently was the person that was the main negotiator with Russia before the invasion, and he was a person that very strongly um, asserted that no invasion would take place, which turned out to be not correct. And he is implicated in a lot of corruption that has been rocking the country recently. He's implicated, and he's basically the person that could not have known what has been going on. And all of this is happening as Ukraine is in a very delicate position. Then the anti-corruption bureaus are actually discovering more and more corruption. One of the more recent ones that were reported on was a case of the people that were supposed to build infrastructure for people to get heating and water near the front line, that they were basically deprived of it because of corruption.
So Ukraine is in a bit of a tough spot there. The reason there's so much corruption is because they were a former Soviet satellite state, and the Soviets were corrupt as all hell. We've had those discussions. I mean, corruption was literally a way of life. They couldn't even see the corruption. They were swimming in it so thick.
Yeah, Poland was in a very similar situation. Poland was in a very ingrained culture of corruption. And
so,
that culture extended not just in the government, it extended to everyday life, to everyday people. That's all that they had to
in order to
depend on it.
In order to join the EU, in order to ostensibly join NATO, they have to reach a Western style of sort of internal functioning, which would be to attempt to be anti-corruption. We won't talk about what Trump is doing.
That's right. That is also the route that Poland had to go through when it was joining the European Union. The curbing of corruption, restructuring of civil society, restructuring of the judiciary branch. Maybe if I were in the house that I live in, I could bring out documentation about it, since there were people in my family that sort of took active part in the years from the political side of Poland joining the EU. So I had some internal party documents sort of that talked about what has to be fixed in order for Poland to join the European Union, and basically matches what Ukraine has to do.
But Ukraine is having to do it during a time of war. So Zelensky is managing a war. He got a lot of flack for dissolving at least one of the bodies that is supposed to be helping to catch the corruption. And
he
now
tried to render them. He didn't exactly dissolve. He tried to render them useless, but there was a protest, and he had to walk it back.
There
was an attempt to render these organizations basically toothless, to bring them under the head prosecutor's office, which would render them, because the anti-corruption bureaus would be under the supervision of the bodies that it is supposed to investigate, which you can probably understand why that would be a conflict of interest.
I have no Trump idea what you're talking about, Trump. So, yeah, I mean, the DOJ in the United States is the perfect example of, I mean, it's just like, we'd like you to investigate Donald Trump. Like, oh, never heard of the guy. He's certainly not in the Epstein files. How is this playing out in Ukraine right now? How are people taking the fact that Zelensky's right-hand man, so important to Zelensky that he basically had him doing a lot of heavy lifting, despite the fact there was no actual official office for him, is now gone. Zelensky's been spinning this, as I understand this, as this is literally how committed we are. There's nobody above reproach. How are Ukrainians feeling about this? If they've had it, if you can gauge at this, it's still early.
Well, I wish I would be. I wish my passport had not been eaten, so I could be right now, as I should have been in Ukraine and able to talk to people directly as to what is happening politically. But I know that many people wanted him gone. I know that many people really hated the amount of power that he wielded, the many things that he was implicated in. There was a strong push to get him out of office, especially during the recent energy sector scandal. And I know that many people are probably happy that he is gone, that it's a good move for Ukraine to get rid of this person. Although, of course, there's a whole discussion to be had about whether or not Zelensky himself knew about things, how much he knew. Was it really just Zelensky being the innocent president that just happened to have a very sketchy, subordinate? That's, all that is in the realm of speculation. But the general consensus, like a lot of people felt that Zelensky, it is what it is. He has to stay. He is the president. He has been elected to be the president. So he should at least stay in power as long as the war is happening. But Yermak was nobody elected him. There's no real legal basis for him being where he was, or wielding even any of the political power that he has. So I think that many Ukrainians are probably happy about what's happening. Although all of this is a double-edged sword. It's basically very difficult to. It's a difficult situation because on the one hand, obviously, even if there is corruption in the country, it is a good thing that is being combated by those organizations. It is good that people like Yermak are going away. There was actually a fear at some point that the conversation about the peace talk overshadowed the pressure to get rid of Yermak, and that the sudden awful peace plan actually might have saved his ass, but it seems like it did not, which is a good thing. But on the other hand, every time a corruption scandal comes out, every time this sort of thing happens, that Yermak, in the light of corruption scandals, removes himself, as in puts down his resignation, it will always be weaponized by people, by state bodies, by heads of states that are against Ukraine, to say this country is corrupt, this country is just unworthy of being helped. Russia is very glad that it can use this rhetoric. This is also rhetoric that has been used by Viktor Orban. This will inevitably happen, the weaponization of this to pressure. Actually, there's been a lot of speculation, because it's never 100% factual, saying that the reason why Donald Trump was so aggressive in his push for this plan, you have to accept it, you have to accept it by Thanksgiving, or else I will cut off help and intelligence, which apparently is something that he walked back on a bit. But that was because of, among other things, because of those corruption scandals. He felt that Ukraine is in a vulnerable enough position that you can just push on Ukraine, whatever it may be, because it's weak.
So because of the scandal, Zelensky had been weakened enough that he could, if he really made a push, he could force the hand. Okay, yeah. That's somebody who, in my view, does not understand. Zelensky can be weakened all anybody wants, but because Zelensky can't negotiate the deal, to the best of my understanding, at least the giving up of land, that has to be done by their parliament, and I think even it's a I think it's a constitutional
it's
amendment.
Just a non-starter.
Yeah, it's a non-starter anyway. So I find it interesting when Trump makes and says those things, because it means he knows absolutely nothing about the sides that he's negotiating with, which apparently is his usual style. He feels like he doesn't need to know, that it's almost a burden to know something about them when he goes in. Better to go in with a clean slate. I did want to point out, we did expect you to be in Ukraine. I'm sorry that you're not there. The reason I made so much of a thing, in the U.S., there's an old joke when somebody fails to produce something. It starts from school, the idea that a child would go up to their teacher and said, I did all my homework, but I can't give it to you because my dog ate it. My dog ate my homework. And so in the
Yeah.
US, that is a culturally an excuse for any kind of failure, and nobody believes it. Nobody ever believes it. It's not true. It's not ever true. Even if it is true, nobody's going to believe you. So when you say my dog ate my passport, it's hilarious for us as Americans. It's hilarious because it's just sort of like, you know, that's a child's excuse for getting out of it. It's a very funny. I
have a very spoiled, long-haired German Shepherd, and he likes eating my stuff.
Oh.
And well, when I told at the passport office, when I said, yeah, I have a thing, my dog, I showed it, ate my passport.
Mm-hmm.
And the ladies just said, yeah, they do seem to have a taste for it. They do seem to have a taste for them, for the passports, yeah.
Titan, I built a time machine, but my dog ate it. Yeah, I know. We got to do something about that, because that could have been useful.
I'll be going to Ukraine in about 2 or 3 weeks when my passport is handled.
Why do you go to Ukraine?
To report on children and children's situations in the war.
Okay.
It's divided into a couple of different sectors. One is kidnapped children, ones that were taken from the war zones and placed in Russia to be adopted, Russified, and basically to prepare them to become Russian soldiers in the future. Now the number of those children is approximately estimated to be between 20 and 30,000, the so-called unaccompanied children. And then you have the children that live in the occupied territories. And I also report on the children that have been taken from those occupied territories and returned to Ukraine. The number of Ukrainian children living in the occupied territories that suddenly becomes a staggering number, approximated at about 1.6 million. Yes, those live with families, so it's just people that live in the occupied territory.
And the families are no doubt trying to keep the culture alive, and for now can sort of do that because Russia's got other concerns. But Russia's ultimate goal is the Russification of all of them.
Oh no, it's already happening. The Russification is already. The people are already being clamped on. There are many parents that hide their children at their home, do not allow them to go out ever. Just try to homeschool them, but it does not always work. It does not always succeed. So the children develop huge educational gaps. And when they return to Ukraine, they have to just deal with having to catch up. There are children that have been rescued that have never done anything with scissors in their life, or have never glued anything with on a piece of paper with glue in their entire life.
Jesus.
So it's a problem, the educational gap in children. There is also, of course, children that live in Ukraine and suffer from the war, and I report on that as well, and the problem, the educational gap there. A lot of schools have been simply destroyed, bombed, and those that are not sufficiently prepared are closed. Children cannot go to school. Like in the city of Kharkiv, many children just cannot go to school every day. That's just out of their realm of, they just study online, and 2 or 3 days per week, when they are accepted, they go to the so-called bunker schools underground when they study. There are children that have basically never experienced in-life education, only online, because there was COVID, and then almost immediately there's been the war. I think I interviewed a family that lived in Kharkiv, in the most damaged neighborhood in the city. They've been shelled and bombed from day one of the invasion, and the mom of the boy that I interviewed said that he has only experienced about 2 school years of real life education because of the things that have transpired. The education gap is a real problem on many different levels, and it will continue being a problem even when the war ends, should the war end, because there are many developmental issues that stem from the war, and undoing that damage will be very long and a very difficult process.
There was a study that came out just as, because I'm a teacher, so one of the things, just as I was getting my license to teach, a study came out, so this would have been 30 years ago, that because people were concerned about why inner city schools had such a hard time teaching children, and the idea was that in part it was the violence, and in part it absolutely is, and there was also a concern that in part it was because they were mostly black kids or this or that, and that wasn't the issue. What the issue it turned out to be was that our brains have two modes. It has survival mode and it has growth mode. And when you're in survival mode, whether it's deliberate or not, but if you feel threatened, you actually can't learn at the same rate. Your learning rate drops by about 70%. So the kids who, and in Massachusetts, we would take kids from inner cities and bring them into schools where there was no violence, there was no metal detectors or anything like that, and they still weren't learning. And it turned out you can't just flip modes just like that, because they would go home to guns and violence.
The children. You have to work with the children. It's not that simple. And of course, I could be talking about the U.S. education system at length, but the problems that I have with it, the fact that schools are being funded by property taxes, just a very bizarre and just very, I just think it's horrible that children that should have access to education, because the taxes bring down the value. A school that needs funding and should be, by all logic, receive more funding in order to elevate the children's performance, is funded less because of the property tax. It just makes absolutely no sense to me.
And a rising tide for all boats. I mean, if you funded all schools basically according to their need, and I know that sounds awfully communist, but if you did that, you'd have a better educated population that could accomplish more. And the countries that do that are succeeding better, and that includes, but is not limited to, say, Japan, whose education system absolutely wipes us out. So let me ask you this. You had mentioned Kherson, and you had said that the kids, first of all, I have to believe learning... Kharkiv, thank you. I have to believe learning in a bunker isn't easy either. No windows, I mean, they're underground.
But it's still a significant improvement from learning online, or in the case of children that are in those villages near the front line, or even a bit further from the front line, not being able to study at all when they don't have access to the internet and nor education person. In those cases, there are groups of psychologists from non-governmental organizations that go there, not even to educate them, but to just stabilize them and to be able to allow the children to meet, to have a sense of socialization, because of course it's not just about education, it's also about socialization. And because the children do not have that, they develop problems with everyday interactions, they develop problems with speech, there's just several problems that arise from the fact that kids just cannot meet every day with one another and just talk, play, exchange ideas, or do whatever, really.
So you mentioned Kherson. Why is that such a problem? Or Kharkiv? I know why I keep getting them.
I wanted to go to Kherson, but that's still ways away, it seems, for me.
Well, it's an interesting place to go to. We'll have that conversation in a minute.
Human safari,
Is Russia targeting schools and hospitals?
Yeah, of course. Like when I've been in Kyiv, one fine morning, I was thinking to myself, Kyiv is fairly safe. I'm here in the corridor, just sitting here, and there have been so many alarms lately. I just feel like I keep going back and forth to the corridor. Is anything even gonna happen in Kyiv that has the best anti-air in the country? I feel like nothing's gonna happen. And minutes later, as if karma was trying to punish me, I heard a sound of a missile overhead, and it hit a children's cancer hospital. It was a very, it was very well reported in the media that Russia has struck a children's cancer hospital with a missile in Kyiv. Oh yeah, absolutely. Maternal wards, kindergartens, schools. Oh God, was it was it 1,600? Over 1,600 schools, I believe, were just demolished in Ukraine. Many schools were.
What is Russia's
destroyed.
ultimate goal, do you think, at this point?
When it comes to the war,
Yeah.
I mean, I think it's me personally as a Polish person. I think their ultimate goal is to bring back Ukraine into the fold. It's like Putin himself has said multiple times in his speeches and in his writings. It's like the main philosopher of Russia has said, Alexander Dugin, who is very open and very blunt about these goals. He doesn't try to pretend there's some NATO justification. He doesn't pretend to say there's some minority rights that are being, Putin does those things, but Dugin does not. He just says Ukraine ultimately can either exist as a part of Russia in some capacity, so either under Russian control, either with a government that is subservient to Russia, such as in Belarus, or directly incorporated into the Ruski Mir, or not at all. That is basically the driving philosophy behind this conflict. Ukraine can either exist as part of the Russian world, or it should not be suffered to exist at all. And it shows that all the policy, it perfectly aligns with not wanting Ukraine to join NATO, with begrudgingly, it seems Russia is willing to accept Ukraine in the European Union, but on the other hand, we have countries that are quite aligned with the Russian thought that are blocking Ukrainian accession path at every opportunity. The chief country among them being Hungary. Orban Viktor has announced that he will never allow Ukraine to join the European Union, that it is a thing that is against the Hungarian people, and that he will only accept some special status that maybe possibly Ukraine could have with the European Union when they could have some trade, some relations, but that it should never join because that would be bringing war into the European Union. And he is very aligned with Russia. That's just, at least right now. Orban is very opportunistic. Orban cares about Orban, and when he was young, he was very anti-Russian. Now he is very pro-Russian. It's just with
whoever's winning, he's gonna, yeah. So there's this peace plan, which essentially what it does is it would demilitarize Ukraine, give Russia even more land than they've currently been able to successfully occupy, and give them the defensive.
The defensive positions. That's the important part.
Which would allow them to invade consequence-free again in a few years and finish conquering all of Ukraine. So it seems to me that peace plan really is sort of a plan that's would be the end of Ukraine one way or the other if he accepts it. If he doesn't accept it, and if Trump were to actually withdraw everything, Zelensky would be in equal trouble as well. Is there a peace plan that would work, do you think, or is it essentially, at this point, only one of these two countries in their current state can survive? Either there's a collapse of Russia and it's restructured in a way where it doesn't actually care about Ukraine, or Ukraine gets conquered.
I mean, of course, there is a plan that could work, but it would require respecting the perspective of Ukraine. Like very interestingly enough, this whole peace proposition, this whole peace plan that apparently started with Russia behind closed doors via certain phone calls that have been leaked, basically pushing this plan as their own little framework to be working on. And of course, for some bizarre reason, the special envoy 𝐒𝐻𝐿 has been coaching the Russian side on how it should be dealing with Trump, which is a very interesting way to conduct negotiation and international politics. And the very big mistake that the European side, for sure the European side, because with the United States, the thing is that you, at some point, you just have to ask yourself if the United States really is on Ukrainian side in any capacity, or if it's just not, quite frankly, on the Russian side with a thin veneer of neutrality and wanting to just be this mediator. But Europe has made a huge mistake of allowing Russia to set the pace for the whole negotiation. Usually, when you do negotiations, two sides start off with their position. Right? We would agree that usually you have one side putting forward their position, the other side putting forward their position. We match those positions and we find something that works for both of us, for both of our positions. But Europe did not do this, or of course the United States. The West, the Ukraine's allies did not do this. The Russian position was taken and it was worked on, which is a big difference between having your own position that was formulated by you from the start, from zero, independent of the other side's position, and not having any of your own and just taking what other side pushes at you and saying, okay, we'll just tweak this, we'll just tweak that, we'll just make this more acceptable, we'll just make that. This is a completely different framework to be working on than having your own position that just pushes against the other and let's see where we can meet.
Well, and Ukraine hasn't even been invited to most of the negotiations, if I recall.
This Russian version has been created completely without Ukraine's involvement, which is, by the way, which could have been a great opportunity for, if Europe really wants to be active and participatory in this whole process at all, Europe could have invited Ukraine and said, okay, what is your position? What do you want? What type of peace would you want to have? And create a plan based on that. But that has not been done. But the only plan that has been considered and worked on has been the plan, the 28-point plan that has been given as a starting point, as a framework. This is just, that sets the pace for the whole negotiation. This plan should not be the pace setter, the framework creator for the entire negotiation. The Russian perspective. It is said that Russia has a great ability to, at least domestically, to control things, to influence things, and as you can see, this influence reaches quite a lot further if Russia was just able to set the pace to the whole peace negotiation by making its wish list basically the starting off framework of how the whole thing should be conducted.
Given the that the U.S. is not a reliable partner in this, what should the EU be doing, and why is it in their interest to be more involved?
Europe should make it clear that it will not allow any concessions of territory that the United States is apparently very prepared to do. The United States, as we speak, is apparently preparing to give 𝐒𝐻𝐿 an okay to say that the United States will accept that the Donbass region is accepted as Russia by the United States, that Crimea is recognized as Russia by the United States, even if Ukraine does not recognize these things at all.
Even if nobody on the planet except Russia recognizes. I mean, nobody.
And that already is a very bad thing. And Europe should, of course, there's a problem of unity in Europe because, again, you have Slovakia, you have Hungary, you have the Czech Republic increasingly that are not exactly united with the rest of Europe on this topic. And even when Trump did his little sanction on Russian energy, he immediately gave an exception, even if it was at the cost of a bad deal to Hungary, which is not discussed as much. That actually Viktor Orban got a pretty bad deal with the United States in order to gain this exception to the sanction from the United States. But also Slovakia received this exception by extension because Slovakia conducts its energy business with Russia via a Hungary company. So since the company receives an exception, Slovakia automatically receives that exception as well. So it's just Europe should be more proactive in trying to set the pace to a counter proposal that is. There's been actually two counter proposals proposed from the European side. One that was 27.5 point and a 24 point. It was now apparently it's been curbed to 20, but still unacceptable. And of course, Europe is apparently considering pushing against, like, Europe is apparently considering giving Ukraine some sort of edge. No, I wouldn't say edge. Bolstering Ukraine's position in this whole thing by utilizing the frozen Russian assets. There was an idea not so long ago to give Ukraine a loan with using those assets over 100 billion euro, 150, I believe, something like that. And Belgium blocked it. There is fear of retaliatory action from Russia, of course. There is fear of diminished investment in Europe, all of these sort of things. And now Europe is apparently more aggressively pursuing using those funds, after all, to bolster Ukraine's budget, which is having a huge deficit, and it's coming into the next year and with this huge deficit, which is a problem.
Well, and if Russia's got a problem with it, you can just tell them, look, don't worry about it. It'll be deducted from the reparations you have to pay in the future, so it's not a problem. You can just,
Yes,
it'll be deducted.
Europe is really worried about the argument that Russia might use that this is confiscation of goods, and this is just what happened to European Union being pro international law order, which is just hilarious coming from Russia. But it is what it is.
I hadn't even considered that. I was wondering why they had. Okay, that's why. Yeah. All right. So let's get on to the topic that I keep inadvertently jumping into, which is Kherson. I think I just want to talk about that, which is
the human safari.
The human safari. So what can you tell us about that? We haven't reported on it in a while, which makes it seem like it's over. Is it still going? How serious is it? Have they upped their tactics? What's going on over there?
Well, I haven't been there myself, so I cannot talk about it in detail, but I know definitely that the human safari is still going on. It's not just happening in Kherson, though. It's happening in various different places in Ukraine. Drones hunting for civilians. In fact, a journalist whose work I wanted to shout out today was there during the pretty recently, apparently.
So Dylan Burns, who we've had on, and we had on to talk about the human safari, and he just released a video on the human safari.
He did a documentary on Krovsk right now. The human safari one is a little bit older.
Yeah, that's when we had him on. For that one. So why are you a fan of Dylan Burns?
Oh, because he is very well, is very knowledgeable on the region. He's one of the Westerners that pays attention to um not seeing history from a nationalist narrative, not necessarily creating a glorified propagandistic image of what is going on in the war. Like he basically is a proper journalist when it comes to these things. And um, I follow some Polish reporters, some Polish people that do this sort of thing, and I feel like there's a lot of misrepresentation of what's happening in Ukraine. I feel like there are people that have good intentions. Sometimes I will not necessarily be talking about them in length. That do create this a little bit skewed image by creating this nationalistic framework of talking about the subject of saying, oh, the Ukrainian nation has been this at this point of time, and then it leads directly to this, and here we are now, which is not correct. And I know that from what I've observed of his work, Dylan Burns manages to escape these trappings pretty well. And of course, he does a very good balance of, which is very demonstrative in his newest documentary, of balancing, showing the perspective of both the military, what is going on at the front line, um, both good and the bad, which is very important to know that that latest documentary shows the problems that the Ukrainian army faces, not just on directly on the battlefield when it comes to the Russian army as its opponent, but also things like compensation for their work, like when they fight in this place as opposed to here, they will not get their bonus, things like that. Just mix-ups with being compensated, and it mixes well with this perspective of showing what refugees go through, the misplaced people, displaced people that have to leave their home time and time and time again because Russia just destroys and takes over the places that they lived in. Like they lived here, then they have to move out and move in somewhere else, and then now they will have to leave once again and rebuild from scratch. This sort of perspective of just elderly people that are just abandoned, don't have anybody, and don't want to leave those dangerous places because they can't afford to live in the city, and it's just too much for they feel like they don't have anybody, even if when they do have somebody that would gladly take them and they don't want to be abandoned on them. It's a lot. I highly recommend to watch his work. It's very all encompassing. It's very objective. It does not try to colorize. It does not add fanfare to what's going on. It does not. It's very raw in its delivery.
Not hyperbolic.
And of course, yeah, I do appreciate that, which is something that many other people are not able to do. He does not put himself at the center of the work. He almost removes himself from the work and focuses on the perspective of what's going on the people involved. They become the central figures of his movies, which should be a thing. That should absolutely be a thing, which is not always what people that go out and film do. Usually it's like, hey, I'm here, I do this and that, and blah blah blah. And you will notice that in the Dylan Burns documentaries, he rarely actually appears on screen. He rarely features in the work himself. The most that you will get from him is the voice-over lines that explain the situation, the context, the history, etc. That you can just, to make it easier for people to watch and know fully what is going on.
YouTube definitely rewards those that engage in hyperbole or the the clickbait and the this, and he does not do that. So we've included a link to his channel. I assume most of you know him because we have had him on a couple of times, and because he's really made a name for himself quite deservedly. So there's a link to his channel in the description.
I feel like compared to some people, he could be more appreciated personally, but it is what it is.
He will be. He's got too much talent not to be. You can watch him in the learning process because he's still new at this in the sense he's not a journalist who's been doing this for 30 years. He's new. He's got but he wants to do it right, and you can tell he wants to do it right, and he wants to tell the story for its own sake. Watching him talking about the human safari, and also talking about the people who protect against drones, especially at night. They have, I think he had said, they have about a 15-second window to shoot down the drones, and the ability to actually locate and then start shooting, and of course you have to lead ahead of the drone and all of this other stuff, and then the number of times that they miss, and just knowing that every time they miss, that drone's headed off into it's good stuff. So please go do check him out. So you're supposed to be there now. You're not going to be able to get there
in a few weeks for sure.
And so, what do you plan on doing? I think you can stay about 3 months. Is that correct? Per go, and then you got to come back.
I plan to publish more work, and then I'll try to get accreditation with the armed forces, which would allow me to stay longer, and it would also allow me to get access to more places, like the aforementioned Kherson.
You've been trying to get your work more noticed, and it seems like people aren't as interested in Ukraine as they could be. Why do you think that is?
That's because people have really short attention spans. People are not interested in, I've been doing finding some material from 2014 because I want to release a video. I'm planning to make a new channel with videos related to the filming that I do over there, the interviews that I do over there. And I've done an interview with a 16-year-old from Bucha. Not Bucha, sorry. Bucha just entered my mind. It was... I'm blanking out on the name. I'm very bad at...
no, listen. Was it yesterday or the day? At some point...
Bakhmut.
I blanked on the capital of Russia for like 90 seconds. I blanked on the capital of Russia. And normally I wouldn't want to remind anybody of that, but they're not going to forget.
Is it Warsaw?
No, I just couldn't. I was just like, does it begin with a Z? I forget. So anyways, please, you were okay. So you were interviewing. You were interviewing a 16-year-old.
Yes, from Bakhmut.
Yep.
From the famous battle for Bakhmut, and there was a little less known for many people battle for Bakhmut in 2014 when the separatists wanted to take the city. There was fighting, there was shelling, and the girl was small when the fighting started in 2014, and then was older when the full-scale invasion happened. And I feel like when I'm trying to find footage to complement with her stories about what's been happening in the past in Ukraine, that there's people try to drive home the point that the war has not started in 2022, but in 2014. And I feel like to many people that just sounds like a slogan. That people don't really understand what that entails. That there's a lot of available footage done by journalists, done by people back then that not only has a staggeringly low viewership, but also just people don't know about any of these things, what has been happening. Like a story of a small boy in the east that has been hit by a missile, lost both his legs and a whole arm all the way back in during the war in the Donbass.
Well, and Putin's been paying agitators in the Donbass region for quite some time in order to
Yeah.
I mean, this isn't
So
a new thing. Yep.
sorry,
Gonna-
I was being asked something.
Well, no. Yeah. It's he's been paying agitators since well before that to try to start a revolution. Ever since the Revolution of Dignity, and they basically lost the ability to control Ukraine as a satellite state. They have been paying people in Luhansk and Donetsk to cause trouble. So that's part of the reason why it's sort of like
there's been a lot of different things. There's the fact that people don't understand that either, that children have been kidnapped since 2014. The kidnapping of children started in 2014. That there were children that were kidnapped then, grew up, and as soldiers fought against Ukraine. And some of them are in Ukrainian prisons as we speak. The indoctrination was complete with these Ukrainian children that have been just kidnapped in 2014.
Does Ukraine have an official policy for how to deal with that? Do they officially, if they were originally Ukrainian, try to deconvert them and bring them back, or do they just treat them as Russians?
I actually don't know, because the person that I've been talking to about it, the only thing that she told me is she was the press representative of an organization called 𝐒𝐸𝐿 They conduct rescue operations for the children that are kidnapped. And she basically just told me that it's an unfortunate story because these boys just don't know what happened to them. They consider themselves as part of the independent state of Donetsk and Luhansk, and that they are fighting against the evils of Ukraine. And they don't even realize how much Russia is behind this. Just who pulls the strings, which is evident because at some point Russia got bored of the idea of Donetsk and Luhansk being separate altogether and just got rid of those republics. But that's I don't know if Ukraine has that is an interesting certain thing to look into.
If you find out, let me know. I would love to know, and then we can always have you back. I'd love to have you back from Ukraine, and we can talk more. So keep us updated as to what you're doing when you're over there. In the meantime, is there anything that you can think of that you wanted to make sure that you mentioned and we haven't hit on yet? I think we got it all, but I could be wrong.
Yes. Well, there's of course Russia's response to the peace plan, Russia's current attitude towards the peace plan, which makes it an additional non-starter and just means that the peace plan is not headed anywhere, actually. Since number one, Russia said we will not compromise on anything. We want our maximalist demands, and all the concessions that we were willing to make, we've made in Alaska, which is interesting. And of course, there's Donald Trump, was directly asked by a journalist, okay, what kind of concessions would Russia be making in a peace plan? And Trump's response was, well, their concession would be that they would not be fighting anymore.
Yes. I know he said that. I'm well aware. I am painfully aware of a number of things that he has said in the past.
He said that recently.
Yeah.
And then there is Putin's statement that also Ukraine does not have a legitimate government. Zelensky is not an elected president. He is. So Zelensky cannot sign anything.
Yeah, they don't recognize the Revolution of Dignity. So technically, I've forgotten what what's his name? The who was ousted and is now living in exile in Russia.
Yanukovych?
Yes, Yanukovych. He won't recognize any president other than Yanukovych. So, and there's a reason for that. Or
Yeah.
Trump. I suppose they could install Trump in Ukraine. I would never do that to Ukraine. To all my Ukrainian friends, I would never
Yeah,
do that to you.
Trump is definitely a figure.
Yeah,
Trump definitely has been active domestically and abroad.
he's a little kofefe. All right. Well, I think we've about covered it. I want to thank you again for coming on. I want to remind people that we've included Lucy Hazaz's information in the description. Hazez?
Yeah.
Oh, Hazez
Because
information.
Hazeh is the Lucy Hazeh, so Hazes, no?
Hazes.
Yeah. That's
All right.
how you'd make it in
Plural.
English.
Okay. Hazes information in the. We've been dropping it throughout the show in the live chat. I did want to point out we seem to have an error in the live chat. Somebody called 𝐿𝐿𝐿𝐿 I don't know Uno dropped so many emojis that it just completely screwed up the message, and I don't understand. But thank you for your support anyway. So please do go check Lucy out. Lucy, we wish you the best of luck in Ukraine. Please stay safe. And we also have Dylan Burns listed in the description as well.
It would be nice to link the new documentary, 1 Year in Pokrovsk.
Yes, we should.
On the Pokrovsk front line.
Yep. So thank you all for joining us. The goat is back. The goat shall remain safe thanks to the support of all of the goat lovers on In Time, which I know is basically 95 to 99% of you. And we look forward to seeing you all. Our next scheduled show is Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. We missed downtime yesterday, and but I've been talking with Lance, and there are a few things he'd like to chat about, so we'll either make that one up or we'll see. It's a week. Have a Commander Lance McMillan. So thank you all for joining us, and my guess is we'll have breaking news like within 5 minutes of closing the show, because it's Trump. And the Washington Post article that we just covered on the assassination, really, of two survivors from the first boat strike on November.
I heard that it was done by all those evil Afghani people that were unvetted and just came in planes. And when the journalist said, well, I heard they were very vetted and that they came out clean. And Trump said, are you stupid? You stupid person? Are you a stupid person? That's just insane.
Yes, that one was that was crazy, and we almost went with that one. We didn't. The Washington Post came out with an article earlier today, however, saying that the boat strikes in the Caribbean, it turns out in the first one there were 11 people and 2 survived, and they were clinging to the boat. The boat was burnt out. The smoke had cleared. That's why they could see them. The smoke had cleared. The fire was out, but they couldn't get back on the boat. It was unusable. They were just clinging to it, and they ordered a second strike to kill the 2 men. Which, I mean, we were already in war crime territory, so why am I so? But it's just like there are 2 men, and the argument that they have since used is that those 2 men could have radioed for backup. It's like, this is the U.S. military on 2 fishing boats.
They would have used their illegally bought Starlinks to do it.
Yeah. So it's an issue, and we're going to keep covering that. Thank you again for joining us. Oh, we did get Ninjester $5. We prefer you on the ground to in the sky with diamonds. Lots of hearts. Thank you very much for your super chat and for your support. And
Lucy and the Spy.
that took me, you see, that did take me a second. So best of luck to you, and we will see you. Hopefully, we'll get a chance to talk with you while you are in Ukraine.
Yeah, which should be soon. Should be soon. I was hoping it would be now, but
Well, it depends on how much fiber you
Fido
give in
got
your
in the
dog.
way.
Yeah, give your dog more fiber. You should be okay. All right. Thank you all for joining us, and we will see you Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern for In Time. Good night, all.